Today I've got an Audi A6 with a broken coil spring at the back. It's a 2010 and I'm going to change the coil spring. I'll show you how I'm doing it. First thing I've already done is took these bolts out that go into the anti-roll bar links, both sides, so that I've got a bit more room. And the next thing I'm going to do is take that plastic cover off there. There's 110mm, a Torx, and some of those push-in plastic connectors. I'll get that out today and show you the next thing. Now that that cover's out of the way, we can remove these two multi-splines out of there, and this one will come out later on. Okay, and that's for the subframe, and this subframe bolt here will come out later on. So I'll start with those two little multi-splines there, and then I can position the jacks and axle stands on the sill. It's going to rain now, but that's okay. We also have to take the caliper off as well, which will be these two 13s. They just come out, move the caliper to one side. It's an electric parking brake, but the brakes are off now, so that'll just take the bolts out and that'll swing out the way. Like I say, those two bits there, I'll get them off and show you the next bit. That's the caliper out the way, those two bolts, just letting it dangle for now. You can support it if you want. It's going to be fine there. We've got the 21mm socket here. Trying not to make you dizzy. That's going into the shock absorber, the bottom of that. And on the other side of it, we've got the nut, also 21mm. So I'm going to take that out first. I've got a jack underneath here to hold the suspension arm. I've got two axle stands under here, one there, one on the sill. So that's the next thing. We just take that nut, that big bolt out, and we lower this. Only goes so far though, then we're going to lower the subframe to go the rest of the way. So after the bolt's out, that moves freely. Okay, the shock absorber's disconnected only at the bottom. We've moved the jack from under the suspension arm to under the subframe, under the tube there. Now we can get these bolts out. That remaining glongs, we've got the two smaller ones out. Get that one bolt out, and the bolt over here. Those two only. The other side's tight. The other side of the car, I mean, that's all tight, so I'm only working on this side. So, suspension, shock absorber arms, bolts out of there. The arm's lowered, it didn't go very far, there's no way it's enough to take that out. So now, lower the subframe, because the top of the spring sits on the body, so if we lower the subframe, we'll get a little bit more room. I've lowered the jack after getting these bolts out. As far as it'll go, it's been held up by the other side. Everything's still not under tension, it's still slack. It's not enough to take the spring out. So I've wedged this big lever in here. It's a fair size length one. And then what I'm going to do is just push down on that, and that'll give me enough clearance there for it to pull out. I couldn't show you one-handed, but yeah, I've got one hand on the spring here, and as I push down on here, only a couple of inches down there, it was able to easily come out. And we've got to take this rubber bit and put it onto the new spring, insert it in there, whilst I press this, and get it to fit, and just tighten it all up. Got to make sure the end of the spring lines up with the rubber cup that stayed in the suspension arm at the bottom. But that's it, there's nothing difficult so far. Just lowering the subframe that little bit, and that's it. Now I'm jacking up on the subframe, lifting it up enough that I can get these bolts back in. That one and that one for the front. That was up there. And then we'll move the jack when they're in, and lift the subframe, lift the suspension arm up the rest of the way to get the bolt on that we took off for this. I got the jack under here, lifted the arm up, so when I tighten this up, the arm's level, so it's tightened as it should be. See if I can get that side there. There's the nut, so this is all going to be tight with that suspension arm up rather than with it dangling right down. Getting these anti-roll bar links in was probably the hardest bit in the job, putting them back on. I had to kind of guide it with one screwdriver one way and one in there to line up the hole, and then get the bolt in. And I lifted up the suspension on the arm to take the arm closer to the anti-roll bar link, but they were probably the most awkward thing. Same on the other side, put them both in together. So that's it finished, just got the wheels to go on that plastic that's up there. So when I shift the axle stand, I can get the plastic cover on there and then put the wheels on and lower it down. We're done. Hopefully that's going to be helpful to somebody that's going to give it a go. Thanks for watching.